Hi, welcome back. I'm Dr. Stephanie, and I was doing two segments on books that I like and why that I like them, and make some recommendations for you. So the first set that I did were by people who were not Christians, who were mainly about autism or Asperger's or the spectrum in some way, from first-person accounts to clinicians who work in the field. So today I want to share some books that I recommend. Some may or may not have to do with autism, but if you're looking for things that are helpful to you in your personal work, in your individual work, in your spiritual work, just trying to understand this complex situation that you're in, I'll talk you through some of the books I love and why. So I'm already going to say this book is my book. It is going to be under revisement for two reasons. It's in blue, and a lot of adults don't like the lighted up blue, and it has the old puzzle piece. So when this book was originally printed in 2015, I was a little bit more of the lighted up blue movement. I am less there now. I'm more in the neurodiversity movement, but available for the next year or so. Until we get it redone, we are in process of putting together a new book. This book right here, Confessions of a Christian Counselor, How Infertility and Autism Grew My Faith. This is mainly my account, my story of my daughter being diagnosed, all the things that we went through, also the infertility struggle that we went through, all of the schooling stuff that we went through 504 IEP, my faith struggle, my anger with God, my incorrect view of God, and bringing me back to the correct view of God. And then the forgiveness of the people who caused me so much harm and harm for my child. So this story is really kind of my story. So if you really want to understand kind of what a child might be going through, that Sydney's story is told through my eyes and what I was observing, a mother's perspective, if you're a pastor or a counselor really wanting to understand a family perspective, what's going on, that's what's in this book. In the back of the book, in the appendixes, I thought it was really important to share things about research that I had done in the field. So I have autism and empathy, supporting families who are on the spectrum, autism awareness, should I tell my child, autism and aggression, autism and spirituality, a beginning to a little introduction to autism and marriage, autism and emotion, the DSM-5, complex cases, spectrum teens. So by the time this book was written, I was blogging and writing articles for the American Association of Christian Counselors, Autism, Asperger Magazine, parenting magazines. And so those articles are in the back of this book. So the first part is personal story. The second part would be interviews and articles that I've written. So this book will be available probably for another year and a half. The new book that we are working on as a family will be taking the whole family's perspective. My daughter is now almost 25. She wants to tell things from her first person perspective. My other daughter is 21 and about to get married. She wants to tell things from a sibling's perspective. Now that Dan and I know that we're a neurodiverse couple, we can put our parenting and things we now know about our relationship as a neurodiverse couple will be in the updated book. But this one is still available on Amazon. So enough of the plug on that. Another book I really like from a Christian author from a first-person perspective is Views from the Spectrum by Ron Sanderson. Ron is a Christian, and he also writes from a first-person perspective. This one is about children and understanding your child on the spectrum. He talks about some of his lived experience and also kind of teaching children on the spectrum about faith and matters of faith. So also recommend this book, Ron Sanderson, Views from the Spectrum. Okay, so those are the only ones that I have that are really kind of spectrum focused. So other ones that I think are really important. This book, the Bible is the most important book, the Asperger book that's on my shelf up there, a social psychology book, and then this book, pretty important. This is Emotional Healthy Spirituality, the updated edition by Peter Scazzero. Then based on this book is a feature book that we use all the time, which is Emotionally Healthy Relationships. There is a wicked glare in here, so sorry about that. But you're looking for a white and blue book with an iceberg on the front, Peter Scazzero. This just kind of talks through, I think this is important for all people, but I think especially for people on the spectrum, or if you grew up in a faith tradition that talked about emotions being bad, or not feeling emotions, or only feeling healthy emotions, and shame towards feeling grief or sad emotions. This is really important, talking about you really can't be spiritually mature and healthy if you're not emotionally healthy in there as well. Because Jesus, our model, our mentor, experienced all of his emotions. He did not stuff them. He did not name it and claim it. He experienced his emotions and he processed them and he grieved. So I think this is a great book. If you work with me, I will ask you to do this as a class, or I will ask you to do it because it's now available for free on YouTube. You can look up emotionally healthy relationships. There are 8 videos that the Scazzeros have done. And this could be a self-help book. Again, if you're in a place and you don't have any means, this has nothing to do with autism, but one of the reasons I love emotionally healthy relationships is it teaches scripts. And so I say to my clients all the time, if this book was written for neurotypical people and it teaches scripts on some basic communication and how to check in and talking about something that hurt me and learning how to clean fights and learning how to negotiate something and learning how to have a Sabbath and a rule of life where you have rest and rhythms of rest. This is a great workbook. And so go to YouTube and find the other 8 videos that go with it. Then this book is about $19, and you can do this again in a small group. You can do this as a couple. You can do it as a family. It's not just meant for marital relationships. You can use some of these same communication skills. If you've got other little Aspies and Audis and neurodiverse folks in your house, your kids, this is something that I actually use in family therapy as well. So another great resource. Now, there's some other things that are going to kind of come up when I'm doing work with people. So again, these books aren't really autism focused, but it might be individual work focused. Now, this one's a tricky one. I like Love Needs better than the 5 Love Languages for a couple of reasons. I'm not knocking the book. I think the 5 Love Languages is a great book for neurotypical couples. However, when I was doing my interviews and research, some of the couples are like, well, technically some of the ways we experience love in our relationship is different. So look, one of the 5 love languages is words of affirmation. So the wives will say, you know, really what I want more than affirmation and appreciation is validation. I want words of validation. Some of the people on the spectrum, both men and women, said, you know what? Sometimes love for me is if you give me an hour of uninterrupted time on my special interest. That is what is loving to me. That's my love language. Okay, so love languages has its place. It's kind of a good foundational. I found this one at a conference, Love Needs, by Dr. Mike and Rhonda Garrett. And this talks about, from their research, there are 30 different types of love needs. Now, what I like about it is it takes away an excuse, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to do that, right? So I'll tell you the negative end of the sword, though. So you can get this book, I think it's maybe $5.99, and you can download a worksheet that goes with it. You read and you rate your top 30 needs, and then you rank them down to your top 10. On the back of the worksheet, you put your love need and you put 2 concrete examples of each love need. So there are 20 concrete, direct things on the love list, all right? So for everyone who comes to me and says, I would do it, just tell me what to do, she's too abstract, she doesn't give me enough information. Great. Now here's the problem with this book. When you do this book and you do the worksheets and she tells you or he tells you what he or she needs, and then you don't do it, now you can no longer claim ignorance. So if you really want to know what to do and you really want something that will put it in concrete, direct terms, this is a great book to get you started. You go online, download the worksheet, and you'll come up with 20 concrete things that you can do to speak each other's love needs. Again, once you know and you choose not to do them, we have a problem. Now, you might have to negotiate some of the expectations back and forth between the two of you as a neurodiverse couple, but once you kind of put them down and you agree to them, we might have a character or a willingness problem. So that being said, I still like this book because it's not the book's problem if people don't follow through. An author that I love, and I use her a lot with some of my neurotypical wives. I might use these in my groups that I do, my group coaching. So first of all, I think it's always important for wives that we start by knowing ourselves through God's eyes. not through our marriage eyes, not through our spouse's eyes. So I'm going to mention a bunch of books by June Hunt, and this one is a 31 interactive devotional, Seeing Yourself Through God's Eyes. Very good book. Now, she's written a bunch. If you have been in any form of abuse in your marriage situation, or even from your family of origin, how to rise above abuse. She's going to talk about the 5 main types of abuse, from psychological, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual abuse. You can buy them as single books, or you can buy them all together. This is a cheaper value to buy all of them together. June Hunt also has all of these little, she calls them keys. And so this one I've used in coaching and counseling before. She's got loneliness, she has grief, intimacy, conflict, family of origin, a bunch of different keys. And that's Hope for the Heart, June Hunt. So she's got several things that might help specifically women if you're kind of doing some of your own work. Maybe your husband is not willing to do the work right now, is not willing to do marriage counseling, so you can become stronger in yourself and stronger in the Lord and get back to your identity in Christ and work through some of the damage that the relationship has caused. She's also got this one. This is really good because sometimes in these relationships, wives, you too, can become dysregulated. So I think this is a good one for whether you're on the spectrum or whether you are not on the spectrum, how to handle your emotions. Anger, depression, fear, grief, rejection, and self-worth. All are combined in this wonderful manual. Another book that Iris and Kathy, if you have listened to that podcast, you heard us reference Mending the Soul. This is what it looks like. This book is best done in a group. It is meant for group or community work. So if you want to really do some soul and spiritual level work on mending from various forms of abuse and neglect, when you go to purchase the book online, look up Mending the Soul. You can look up any groups or communities that might be around you that might be offering a group at that time. But this one is definitely meant to be done in group and community. Okay, some other ones just for difficult situations. There's 2 actually that I like, really, by Leslie Vernick. This one is How to Act Right When Your Spouse Acts Wrong. Even when things are not going well, a little bit of like boundaries, and how do I still, if I've decided to stay, how can I stay, have some boundaries, and still be a godly woman? This is a great book. She also has another book, her first book, The Emotionally Destructive Relationship. Great book. She has great resources at her website, Leslie Vernick, and she has core and strength training, also great classes that many of the women that I've worked with, many clients that I have, many women have gone through and had a lot of support and a lot of insight from Leslie Vernick's work. Okay, sometimes with autism, there can be a little smidge of narcissism in there too. And it's also important to know the difference between narcissism and autism or Asperger's. But sometimes the effects, how it feels to a neurotypical wife, feels a lot like what happens to someone who's married to a narcissist. So 2 books on narcissism that I highly recommend. This one is When Loving Him is Hurting You by Dr. David Hawkins. This one specifically is more towards narcissism, but again, if you kind of look through what happens and the results of being married to someone with narcissists, you might see some of the same traits. And then some of the men that I work with are both on the spectrum and have narcissist traits. And it's important to know if you're dealing with that double diagnosis. Now, I love many, many, many books by Dr. Wilder. My husband's traveling right now, and he has some of them with him. But we had Dr. Wilder on our show. I really love Escaping Enemy Mode, The Other Half of Church. This is another one of his books, The Pandora Problem. And this is specifically about narcissism and also narcissistic leaders, because narcissistic spiritual leaders can abuse their flocks and abuse congregants. And so this one is really important, facing the narcissism in leaders and ourselves. And so he'll talk about narcissism, not necessarily in the diagnostic category. All of us left to our sin and pride can end up with some narcissistic traits, but then also recognizing narcissism in leadership. So anything by Dr. Wilder, I love. I'm also reading right now, Joy Starts Here, which is great for recovery and great for gratitude and getting your brain rewired towards gratitude and joy. This one is designed to be a coaching book, and I use this with my clients. I Hurt. This is based on cognitive behavioral approach to thinking about the thoughts that you maybe have that are triggering you, and identifying. It comes with an assessment. You would need to be in a coaching situation to do this book. So if you're coaching with me or my husband, Dan, we use this book, and we are trained by the author, Gary Morris. But you can also, if you are not able to work with us but want to work here, he does have other people that he has trained on this book. If you look up Journey to Love, you would be able to find other coaches. Dan and I bring kind of the autism, Asperger's, neurodiverse piece to it in our work, but this is also a great book. And then controversial books, or at least controversial to some of you, not controversial to me, is some work by Sheila Gregoire and her associates. If you want to understand some of the really abusive things that women have been taught and that continues to be preached, again, from narcissistic leaders and spiritual abuse. This is Fixed It For You. This is a downloadable book by Sheila Gregoire that was put out this year. And then she has been on the show, and we have talked about these other two books. This is The Great Sex Rescue, that talks about the wrongful things that were taught to a lot of women about sex, what is ruining sexual relationships in Christian couples, ways to repair, ways to recover. We might like to change some of your wrongful thinking and wrongful motives, but this is a great book. If you are my age and older and probably has some very bad teaching about women in relationships and the roles of women in relationships, and you want to really understand maybe there's some sexual issues in your relationship, this is a good book. This is her brand new book, which she will be on the show possibly by the time that this comes out on YouTube. She Deserves Better. And this is what women who coming up in youth groups, small groups, women's groups, harmful themes. This is based on 7,000 individuals who were studied, and the Great Sex Rescue was based on 20,000 women's responses. These are high numbers in research. 20,000 and 7,000 are very good numbers for research. A lot of the things, when there are some Christian books that are out there, it might be a pastor, it might be a counselor, maybe writing something that they feel is important to them, maybe writing from their specific marriage doctrine, maybe writing from their specific faith traditions, marriage doctrine. But usually most of the books on the Christian market are not based on any form of research. They are based on someone's calling or someone's perspective or someone's message that they feel has been laid upon their heart, which is fine. But not all of those are very helpful, especially when they are taken to rigid thinking in neurodiverse Christian marriages. So these are some books in the Christian market that I highly recommend. And so if you're looking for things to maybe, like I said, you want to work on some communication, you can do that self-help. If you want to kind of understand a little bit more of your own individual work, some of these other books to work on your emotions, your pain, your trauma. And women, if you want to know why some of us were set up to be in relationships that were harmful, and we were taught some things that were not okay, then look up Sheila Gregoire's material. So thank you for joining me for this next segment that I did today, Books I Like and Why I Recommend Them.